Good morning, ECISD team, as well as our district leadership and support staff in the room today. As it is always an honor and privilege to present the very good things that we do in ECISD, it's also important that we present the things that at times are not at the level of excellence that we would like to see. I'll begin by saying our work, my work, your work, is to be the change that we seek in others. It's not about assigning blame. It's not about focusing on finger pointing. Those things never do any good. It's about focusing on what's factual and what we do next. It's easy to say we have more than 1,400 new kids and that's why we didn't do well. No, that's a fact. It's not a matter of we have many new students to our community. It's a matter of what do we do next? How do we work with and accommodate that? It's not a matter of saying we have crowded classrooms. It's a matter of what do we do next? Well, we hire teachers earlier than we ever have. That's what we do next. It's not a matter of saying we have students who have parents who are working multiple jobs to make ends meet and say, well, that's why we didn't succeed. No, it's a matter of we understand these things because those are realities that we can't change. But those are things that we need to understand. We understand where we are, and we know that our kids deserve better. And we know that too many students were not successful on the STAAR EOC. In a moment, I'll go over those scores, but I want to hit a few highlights. The first thing I want to touch on is 5th grade and 8th grade in reading and mathematics. What was fascinating is the first time the 5th grade and 8th grade scores came back in reading and mathematics, they weren't where we wanted them. But what's impressive as I go over the data in a moment is with 3 weeks, just 3 weeks between the first administration of the STAAR in 5th grade and 8th grade and the second administration, we saw double-digit gains across the district. What that shows is when our teachers, principals, and curriculum department have the data that show where those individual learning gaps are by students or where we're missing it or where our curriculum is deficient, that we can close the gaps, we can meet the needs of individual students, we can work together, and in 3 weeks, we're able to do amazing things. So in a moment when I cover the 5th and 8th grade data, I want you to take a look at how many campuses were above that 70% mark. How many campuses had those double-digit gains? It shows that when we have the information by student, we can do amazing things. When you take a look at our scores across the district, the blessing that we have moving forward is we know now, as the state's going to release the data by individual student and individual content area, individual standard where there are deficiencies, we'll be able to do the same thing for every student in ECISD as we move forward that we did for the 5th graders and the 8th graders in reading and math this year. Think about that. We'll be able to do for all the students in ECISD what we did for our students who are 5th graders and 8th graders in reading and math. And that's important because it shows that when we work together, we can do those things. What we're looking at as we move forward, of course, we have our literacy program that began with kinder, 1st and 2nd this year through a pilot, and we will roll into 3rd next year. So that means the 2nd grade students that were in the literacy classrooms will be much better prepared next year for the 3rd grade reading test. And as I have the 3rd grade reading scores up, you can see that they're at 62% district-wide. So that means we have an opportunity moving forward as we have students who come in who have been taught with our district's literacy initiative. We'll also roll that into 3rd grade, which means our 3rd grade students will be better prepared. What that tells us with our existing 3rd grade students all the way through exit level students, what that tells us we need to do there is we have heroic interventions that we have to put in place, much like we did during the snow day when everybody else was off and our teachers were supporting our 5th grade and 8th grade students, much like we did on the Saturdays, the 2 Saturdays in between the first test and the second. And much like we did with very specific and targeted intervention for students who had failed that 5th and 8th grade reading and math test. So we have that work to do, but we don't do it alone. We don't do it in isolation. We do it together. In the end, It's not about taking a look at the past and saying, here are the things that we should have done. Here are the reasons that we weren't successful. It's not about assigning blame. It's not about finding excuses. It's about what do we do next. It's about finding solutions together. And as we look at these data, as we look at how our students perform, it's not for the purpose of blaming anyone for punitive measures. It's for building and supporting. And so across ECISD, principals, teachers, department chairs, leaders, that's my request to you. As you use this data, it's to build up, it's to identify gaps and identify deficiencies. It's to build up those areas. But it's also a matter of identifying those teachers, those classrooms, those campuses, and those subject areas that did exceptionally well and going in and saying, what did you do? And it's our work to identify those folks and to bring them to the table and say, share with us what you did. Because as teachers, that's what we do. We identify those who have figured it out. We identify those who have found a measure of success, and we ask for their help. We capture that, and we share it throughout the district. What materials did you use? Let's buy them for everybody. What strategies did you implement? Let's do that for everyone. How did you adjust the district scope and sequence? What did you throw out? What did you add in? Let's do that with everybody. So I'll end before I go into the data piece with this statement. I firmly believe that the solutions are out in ECISD's classrooms and on ECISD's campuses. Our job is to go out and find those folks and bring them to the table and say, let's talk. Share your gifts. Share what you did well. Share how you reach students that in other situations we weren't successful in reaching. Let's take that. Let's modify our curriculum. Let's modify our training and our professional development, and let's modify and change out what materials that we purchase. It's never about abandonment. It's about refinement. It's never about bringing somebody in to tell us, well, here's what you need to do. It's about us going to the people who were successful and saying, let's help all kids in ECISD. They all deserve the best. So let me talk about some of the data and what you're looking at here. The first thing is, this is all preliminary data. That means that it hasn't been refined in the sense of this is inclusive of every student in ECISD who took the test. Now we know for state accountability purposes, the last Friday in October, or the snapshot date, those are the kids that ECISD is held accountable for. But we're accountable for all students. So the data I'm going to share today, these are all the students. It's not saying, well, there's some in there that shouldn't have counted against us. No, they all matter and they all count. So I'm sharing all of the data. I'm not sharing cleaned up, refined data. This is it. These are all the kids that took the test. And they're our kids, all of them. So I want to begin by that. The second thing is, when I go into the EOC scores, it's the same thing. We still haven't had the refined, cleaned up scores back from the state. I believe those are arriving Monday, but we have the preliminary information. I don't anticipate there to be such a stark contrast that we don't get this information out immediately. So as I go through this, these are all kids. Special education, English language learners, general education, gifted and talented, kids who are being served under Section 504, every student in ECISD who took the test. Everybody's here. As we take a look at the 2012-2013 third grade reading comparison, as you can see, the 2012 scores, we went ahead and ran the two-year comparison. Like I said, there's no reason in not sharing the information and putting it out there. It's only through putting it out there that we're able to work through this. You can see in 2012, third grade reading was at 65%. 2013, readings at 62%. The state has assured us that they didn't raise the standard, that they didn't change the rigor, that it's the same test but different questions. So in terms of saying, well, it's a harder test or they raised the rigor, we're not going to go there. That's not an excuse. It's a matter of we dropped 3 points district-wide. As you go through the information, you're able to see that certain campuses dropped and other campuses improved. I've highlighted in green, and ECISD team members, I sent this all out to you last night via email, and we're going to post it after this presentation on the internet for everybody in the public to see. But you can see in third grade, Hayes went from 65 to 82. We need to talk to teachers at Hayes, and we need to say, what did you do? You can see that Reagan was a top performer, At 98, they dropped 2 percentage points, but they are still a top performer. So the question is, what are you doing? If you take a look at Cavazos, though they dropped from 77 to 74, they're above that 70% threshold. So we need to ask them, what did you do? What did you use? How'd you reach your students? Blanton went from 70 to 76. You see a 6 percentage point improvement. So we also know that Blanton took in a lot of transfer kids from the Cavazos and Murray Fly Zone that drove across town. So the 2 hours and all of that, hey, that didn't factor in. We saw improvement there. So the question is, what did you do? So we have a whole lot of solutions there. In other areas where we see gaps and where we see drops, we need to ascertain what happened in those areas. You can take a look at, see, Jordan went from 84 to 87. Again, needing to visit with the teachers at Jordan and ask them, what did you do? As you take a look at the next set of scores, reading 4th grade, we went from 2012 to 13 from 64 to 55%. And that's a large drop. That's, there are some questions that we have to ask in 4th grade. What did we do differently? Did we focus so much on the writing in 4th grade that we didn't focus on the reading? So those are questions that we need to ask, and we need to gather that information. As we take a look, you can see that Jordan was at 76, they're at 75. One of the 2 top performers. Reagan was at 99, and they're at 99. So again, we need to reach out to our faculty and teams at Jordan and Reagan in 4th grade and say, all right, tell us, what did you do? What adjustments did you make? Here's what I was alluding to earlier. If you take a look at 5th grade reading, last year it was 65%. This year it's 77%. That's a double-digit gain. So how did we do that? How did we jump up from 65% to 77 when last year, if you follow this, so last year's 2012 scores were 64% of the kids passed. That same group of kids are now at 77%. Do I believe that the 5th grade teachers are that much better than the 4th grade teachers? That's not it. What you're taking a look at is between 2012 and 13 and those assessments, the teachers received the individual student data. And in receiving the individual student data, we knew where the kids' gaps were. So we were able to close those individual gaps. So as you take a look at the comparison from 3rd, 4th to 5th grade, and you say, well, why are the 5th grade scores that high? I believe we have great 5th grade teachers. That's part of it. But the other part of it is when you know where the kids have individual gaps, you can close them. With the 3rd grade data and the 4th grade data, last year we didn't receive the individual student data. We didn't know by student where they made it, where they didn't, what they knew, what they didn't know. So if you take a look at the top performers, you're able to see that Reagan's at 100% last year, they're at 100% this year. But look at Gonzalez. They were at 67% last year, and they're at 93%. We need to go talk to the teachers at Gonzalez and say, what did you do? If you take a look at the other campuses, for example, I'm looking at Blanton again, 67% to 84%. Look at Burleson, 60 to 70. Burnett, 59 to 80. I mean, you go down the list and you'll see that there are a tremendous number of campuses that just improved. If you take a look at LBJ, 78 to 93. Milam, 64 to 78. So there are solutions there. It's a matter, again, of having those conversations. But you can see the difference when our teachers have the data and they know where the kids' individual gaps are, they close them. I mean, the proof is there. And taking a look at 6th grade, we went from 69 to 59. Again, let's take a look at our top performers. If you take a look at our top performers, again, Reagan is a top performer, but also take a look at Hayes. Hayes is a top performer, as is Gonzalez. So you can kind of hear the trend. Reagan's doing some great things, and they have a tradition of excellence. Gonzalez is doing some great things. Hayes is doing some great things. Jordan and LBJ and other campuses, Blanton, they're doing good work. So again, it's a matter of visiting with those teachers and those teams and saying, what are you doing? All right, so let's take a look at secondary. And taking a look at the district scores, in 2012, in reading, we're at 65. We made 1 percentage point improvement to 66. You can see that Bonham in 7th grade reading went from 66 last year to 76, Bowie from 78 to 74, Crockett from 58 to 59, Ector from 59 to 55, Hood 49 to 60, or 48 to 60. That's impressive. Good job, Hood. And again, that's a matter of going to the teachers at Hood and saying, all right, what did you do? That's a lot of gain in 1 year. And Nimitz 74 to 75. If you look at 8th grade reading, you see the same phenomena again. The 8th grade teachers received the data back, because if you're taking a look at the kids who were scoring 82% in 2013, those are the kids that scored 65% in 2012. What's the difference? The teachers got the data by student and they broke it out. So take a look at the top performers. You have Bowie went from 76 to 91, and you see Nimitz going from 73 to 87, and every other campus had about had close to double-digit gains. So again, it'll be the last time I say it, but you can see the difference between not having information and guessing what kids need as opposed to having information, because that's the same group of kids in 2012 that scored 65 who were scoring 82. That's impressive. All right, I'll move a little quicker as I go through the other scores. Let's take a look at mathematics. I'm afraid to touch the screen because I know what happened to me last time. All right, so you're going to have to squint on this one. If you take a look at the district scores in mathematics from 2012 to 13, we dropped from 53 to 46. Some campuses dropped drastically. And again, it's a matter of what were you doing last year that we didn't do this year? What are some of the differences? Okay, let's talk about it. Let's talk about what we did last year that worked that we didn't do this year. If you take a look at Hayes, again, they went from 51 to 70. So in a year in which some went down, Hayes went up. What did you do differently? So it's the same question, but asked a bit differently. The first time you ask a question, you ask, what did you do last year that you didn't do this year? And you're asking to figure out what you stopped doing. With Hayes, you ask, what did you do this year that you didn't do last year, which is the same question, but different in that you want to find out what did you do additionally this year or stop doing last year. So those are conversations that we'll have. If you take a look at Reagan, they were at 90 last year. They went to 98. So again, asking the teachers at Reagan, what did you do differently this year? If you take a look at 5th grade, if you take a look at 4th grade, we went from 64 to 44. That's a drastic drop. But again, it's a matter of asking those questions. What did we do differently in 4th grade this year from last year? And that's a question that we have to ask across the district. You know, if you take a look at it, and it is what it is, other than Reagan, everyone else was below that 70% mark. There's work to be done there. But it's a matter of asking the question, what did we stop doing? Let's revisit that, and then what do we do next? Taking a look at 5th grade math, we went from 63 to 76. Again, that's another one of the retake grades. So the kids that scored 64 last year in 2012 scored 76 this year. That's a pretty impressive gain. So if you take a look at the difference, you'll see that, again, here's Gonzalez going from 77 to 97. That's amazing. You know, that's some good work. Reagan went from 100 to 99. If you take a look at other campuses, just scanning down, I mean, take a look at Ireland. They went from 55 to 87. You take a look at Travis, it went from 47 to 77. So there are good things going on. It's again a matter of asking, what are those? 6th grade math, 73 to 59. We had some campuses that were top performers. Again, Reagan's at 100. And if you take a look at Hayes, Hayes went from 77 to 84 in 6th grade math. All right, what's, you know, again, what'd you do differently? Take a look at Gonzalez again, 69 to 76. So you can see that there are campuses that had tremendous gains. And then you can see there are campuses that slipped. So it's again, that same question. I'll say it enough that I think people will begin asking it themselves. Let me go back here. Let's take a look at the secondary. If you look at 7th grade math, it went from 45 to 43. And if you take a look at 7th grade math across the board, you'll see that there are drops across the board. Hood, of course, went from 25 to 36, so you see an improvement there. You see Crockett went from 44 to 51. Bowie went from 45 to 47. So you see some improvements. But again, the question is, all right, with this information, what we're doing isn't working. It didn't work in 2012, didn't work in 2013. How do we improve that? And again, I go back to the point of individual student performance data. I think that'll make a big impact. Because the kids that in 2012 in 7th grade scored at 45% scored 72% in 2013. Again, let that sink in. The same group of kids in 2012 that scored 45% scored 72% in 2013. Same group of kids. So it's a matter of, when you know what the gaps are, you can close them. You can see that Bonham went from 76 to 79, Bowie from 71 to 79. Look at Crockett, 66 to 72. Nimitz from 53 to 72. Hood from 42 to 58. Ector 59 to 67. Everybody improved, almost double-digit gains. So again, it just highlights the points that I've been making throughout. Let's take a look at writing. We know that we have Abydos writing, and that's something that we rolled out new this past year. We went from 61 to 55. We trained 30 people last year. We're training another 30 people this year. We're implementing a trainer-trainers model, and we think that'll make an impact. If you look at fourth grade, you'll see Gonzalez went from 70 to 72. You'll see that Jordan went from 65 to 77, and you'll see Reagan slipped a bit from 99 to 96. But again, you know, we have 3 campuses we need to sit down with, and we say, all right, tell us what you do. It's good stuff there. The other scores, you know, when you drop, as we see in the district, from a higher score to a lower score, that same question, what did we stop doing? Take a look at 7th grade writing. It stayed the same, 56 to 56. You'll see, however, that Bonham did improve, 58 to 63. Bowie dropped a bit. You'll see Crockett improved, 43 to 56. You'll see that Ector dropped a bit. You'll see that Hood went from 37 to 48. And Nimitz from 66 to 72. So we need to sit down with the Nimitz team of 7th grade teachers and say, all right, tell us what you did in writing. Let's take a look at science and social studies. 5th grade tests in science, and there was no retest for science. It was just one time. So you don't see the big difference like you did with reading and math, because science, it's just one test. One test, one time, that's it. So we went from 58 to 56. We saw a slight drop. You see Blanton is a top performer. They're still at 71%. They didn't lose ground. So what it was that they did, you can see they maintained a degree of consistency. Ireland, however, went from 66 to 77. So Ireland, what did you do? Actually got to go out and meet the science teacher at Ireland last week. And they were celebrating. They were also out in the hall with string and a balloon and a straw, measuring speed and distance and how fast that balloon traveled and all kinds of amazing things. So you can see that they did some good stuff. Reagan went from 88 to 91, so you see improvement there. So again, it's a matter, we have 3 campuses, we need to go and say, tell us what you did. But again, as a district, we dropped a couple of points, but we also saw some improvement. And taking a look at science, we went from, in 8th grade, again, there's no retest in 8th grade science. It is what it is. We went from 60 to 65, so we saw improvement. You can see Bonham slipped a bit. Bowie, however, went from 71 to 78. And the Bowie department chair there does a great job, and he comes in and shares his information, as does the Nimitz. You can see that Crockett went from 47 to 62, Ector from 53 to 62, Hood slipped a bit, and then Nimitz went from 62 to 69. So there's some good things going on in 8th grade science. Social studies, a slight gain, but still too many scores are below that 70% point. So again, we have to go back and take a look at what's going on with our 8th grade social studies. And we did anticipate that social studies would be a challenge, as social studies is different than it has ever been in the past. It's not about memorizing facts and regurgitating facts. It's more about reading it, understanding the historical context, and then being able to interpret the historical context into action, which it's a little different than, you know, when was George Washington president, or was he the first, second, or third president? The questions are quite different. All right. Well, that covers our 3 through 8. Let's take a look at our end of course scores. And again, as I mentioned earlier, these are all preliminary scores. I'll start off with English. Now, we know, and I was an English teacher, English has always been one of our strengths. It's always been in the 90s. And the state did tell us the little tricks of the past, circling things, drawing lines, marking out, that's not going to work. Kids really need to understand at a deep level that how to comprehend complex fiction and nonfiction. They need to understand it at depth, which is a lot different than the tests of the past, which I take my hat off to the state and say they're challenging us to challenge kids to think through what they're reading, as opposed to circle this, highlight that, number your paragraphs. That stuff doesn't work. I mean, it's evidenced here. So what we have to do is take a look at our scores and have a conversation, an honest one, about what works. And again, the solutions are out there. If you take a look at NTO, Odessa, Permian, you see the scores there. 51 NTO, Odessa, and Permian do have students who are taking the English 1 test, which are 9th graders. Many of them are overage 9th graders. It's not an apples to apples comparison. More of an apples to apples comparison would be NTO, Bonham, Bowie, Crockett, Ector, Hood, Nimitz, and you see the comparison across the board. There's work to be done there. Again, as I mentioned, we've implemented the Abydos writing. Last year was the first year, and we trained 30 people. You can take a look at NTO, 30, you see Odessa 7, Permian 14, and then you look at Bonham, Bowie, Crockett, Ector, Hood, Nimitz, and you can again see that this is the first time that we've had this data, and there's work to be done. If you take a look at English 2, you'll see that the scores are higher with English 2 at the high school level. Why are they higher? Well, you see NTO 65, Odessa 64, Permian 66. The students who took the English 2 reading test this year took the English 1 test last year, so they've already seen what the test looks like. So to a point, they know what the rigor level is. The teachers haven't seen the test. Nobody's seen the test or release questions until August. In August, the state of Texas will release the tests. But up to this point, nobody's seen them. But you can see that the kids were able to improve from last year up, or not decrease in their performance, because many of the kids who were at NTO and then Bonham, Bowie, Crockett as freshmen taking the EOC there, they improved their performance at the high school level. If you take a look at the writing still is a challenge. It's still an area that has to be improved. If you take a look at English 3, you'll see again 68, 50, 50. So NTO at 68, Odessa and Permian at 50%. And then the writing is a little better. So the kids that are, again, the familiarity helps, just on the part of the students being exposed to the test once. In taking a look at mathematics, you'll see that the same thing applies. NTO 46. At Bonham, need to sit down and have a conversation. Now, at Bonham, I do know that they've been working well through a PLC type format for quite some time. Now, actually, when Bonham many years ago was academically unacceptable, they implemented the PLC and C-scope curriculum on their own. They were the first to do that. And so you're seeing some payoff with their Algebra 1 scores, Bonham at 86. You're seeing great teaching over there too. You can't neglect that. Hood, 84, Bowie, 81, Crockett, 79, Ector, 52, and Nimitz, 71. Look at geometry. NTO, 74, Odessa, 59, and geometry is traditionally a sophomore or a 10th grade test. And then Permian, 71. And then let's take a look at Algebra 2, which is more of a junior level test, or it could be some sophomores who are advanced and taking higher levels of mathematics. NTO 86, Odessa 95, Permian 97. It's not bad. It's good. It's encouraging. Take a look at science. Biology, NTO 72, Odessa 70, Permian 74, Bonham 81, Bowie 85, Crockett 76, Nimitz 82. Now I'll say this, because it's the first time I think probably anybody in my position in ECISD has been able to say that our science scores are a highlight. So our science scores are a highlight, but when you ask yourself why, well, our science scores haven't been our highlight in the past, so we've committed all kinds of resources and extra assistance and focus on science, and we've been doing that over many years, and so you're taking a look at a payoff of really focusing on science throughout the years. You know, and science was the first content area where we implemented our district curriculum, and where we really focused a lot of financial resources as well in purchasing materials, video streaming, and microscopes, calculators, the whole thing. Chemistry, NTO's at 68, Odessa's at 81, Permian's at 87. So it's an opportunity again to talk to Permian and Odessa and say, all right guys, what'd y'all do? Physics is at 100%. Physics tends to be our very advanced students, and we have great teachers in physics at both Permian and Odessa High School, so that's very impressive. So we have great kids, great teachers, and you can see the results there. They speak for themselves. Let's take a look at social studies. As was with the social studies and the 3 through 8 presentation, You'll see that NTO and World Geography, a freshman level course, is at 68%. Odessa and Permian 10 to 22. Now again, those are overage students or students who are having to repeat. Bonham 81, Bowie 74, Crockett 56, Ector 60, Nimitz 74. So again, Bonham, Bowie, Nimitz. Let's talk. World History, NTO 59, Odessa and Permian 48, 41. Again, we have to take a look at what do we need to do differently there. And then you can see U.S. history, those tend to be smaller numbers there. So Odessa at 33, Permian at 100. That concludes the information that we have. That concludes the presentation. My final words to everybody in ECISD is these data are meant to build upon. These data are meant to identify the people that are doing great work and to ask them ever so humbly and ever so genuinely, tell us what you did. Tell us how you did it. Let's talk. And are you ready to help all the students in ECISD by sharing what you do great? The solutions don't exist in another expensive program. The solutions don't exist in another expensive endeavor. The solutions don't exist in it's time to change out everybody. The solutions are here. It's not about excuses, it's about solutions. It's not about it's not about what we can't control, it's what we do next. And we're all very committed to that. And I know everybody in ECISD is very committed to the students. With that, and this being our last day of school with students on campus, teachers, get some rest. You worked hard all year long, and we know that, you know that, the parents know that, and your students know that. Take a break, enjoy your family, get some rest, and we'll see you during the summer professional development, or we'll see you around if you're helping us out with our summer school. Principals, look forward to sitting down with y'all and figuring out how do we build, how do we grow, how are we going to be the change that we seek in others. Central administrative leadership, it's time to be servants, and it's time to ask what can we do to remove barriers for our students' learning. Thank you.